Hi everyone. So today we want to explore how a company called Vinted is shaping how consumers or consumer behavior in the circular economy. You must have heard about the brand Vinted. It's a peer-to-peer marketplace for second-hand items. So a lot of fashion items you can sell your either your old cardigan or a cardigan you've never used, or just you could sell and buy used items. So this morning I left the house. I actually sold an item on Vinted last night around 10:30 p.m. and I left the house this morning to drop that off at the collection point, and it got me thinking. And I was like, Vinted is a very interesting concept as a company, and also how it shapes our behavior as consumers. And it got me to thinking about a circular economy. Now, if you're wondering what is a circular economy just basically means sort of an economic model, or sort of like a how we repair, how we recycle, how we reuse, and how we refurbish products or raw materials. So it's all about encouraging, or all about the consumer behavior that is directed towards reusing items. And also, just something very interesting. I remember popping into a store, Max and Spencer, to buy an item in the kids section. And one thing interesting around the kids section, if you go into do you want to buy like a jacket for like someone like a toddler or an infant, if you look at the inner label, it tells you to write the name of the child, and it gives you two or three other sort of boxes or provisions or spaces for the whoever the item is passed on to write their names. So it's sort of like the manufacturer expects that item to be used by three or four other kids, and that is almost like encouraging a circular economy. Now, going back to the Vinted whole concept, it's very interesting because I looked up Vinted. Vinted as a company, it's very, the impacts they've made, but looking at how it came about when the two co-founders were trying to sell unwanted clothes during a house move. So this whole Vinted idea started as far back as 2008, and to date is a global company with loads of offices around the world. But it was launched in Vilnius, Lithuania. But it came about due to a need, the need to sell unwanted clothing items. So interested with Vinted, and I think at date they have about 100 million registered, users, and I'm one of them, and I use them to sell an item. And I looked into the whole circular economy concept, and I was like, how is consumer behavior evolving with the whole drive to reduce waste, environmental waste, and also the net zero mandate? How is the consumer behavior, shaping up to that? A company like Vinted is really helping in that helping in that whole drive towards, reducing waste. Some interesting facts too I saw is that only 7.2% of the world, is circular in terms of the circular economy. So basically, a lot of the products you see and materials you see, only 7.2% are reused or recycled. So over 92.8%, goes, is discarded after a single use. And that's just crazy that a lot of items that are used to produce either like your shirt, your shoes, or even the actual shirt or shoes are basically discarded to waste after a single use. You either, I don't know, you either put it in a bin, or it just kind of makes you understand, like, what, there's a lot that could be done in shaping consumer behavior, like in terms of what we do, how we buy items. And Vinted is a massive contributor. They've been able to help people, consider, they made it okay to buy and sell used items. You got Facebook Marketplace as well. You've got loads of platforms now that have made buying and the selling of used items okay, mainstream. And very, very, when you look at the whole Vinted idea, it's sort of like the drive, how it's shaping Gen Zs and everyone's behavior. And one other interesting thing from PwC is about 70%, okay, of the emissions, generated in the fashion industry are used to extract raw materials or new or almost like new materials during production. So if we reuse, recycle, repair, or refurbish what we have, or if you use Vinted to sell an item consistently, that means we're helping the fashion sort of factories to reduce their waste, about probably around 70%, because they spend a lot of 70%, a lot of the waste, are used to extract raw materials. So Vinted is a good trailblazer in this whole drive, but I think generally as consumers, whilst it's good to get a good deal on Vinted, you're not just buying an item because it's cheaper on Vinted, but you're also contributing towards the circular economy. We need to try and get involved in this whole drive to reuse, recycle, repair, refurbish. Until next time, we'll explore more concepts, more consumer behavior concepts around the circular economy and also other areas. Thank you so much.